This real side experience would be a future view pertaining to the human race overall. All simulated creational experience is generated from consciousness. Consciousness is the equivalent of a computer which contains the information, the data, which presents the particular computer game that the data information comprises of. And just as the data is then rendered as graphics on the screen, the game we then are able to play, so consciousness also affects a body form that has the mechanics to decode the construct of the consciousness into the simulation then experienced. In the case of a consciousness, just as it is with the computer operator, each individual decides how the consciousness is to be constructed, the installation of data, or that which we term ideas, and the nature of these ideas will be presented as the corresponding simulation. And so individually, we are the deciders of our creational simulated experiences, and regardless of the type of experience we have, we are responsible for installing the ideas that have affected it. What tends to happen is that most are unaware of how a creational cause and effect works, in that our every thought, emotion, our imagination are as ideas generated via the various multi-dimensional body vehicles, ideas which are consciousness implanted and then affect their nature. And what with most people in a constant state of unregulated thought and emotion creating, little wonder that experience generated may not be precisely what the individual would ideally desire. In addition will be the influx of ideas from the environment the individual is in, for everything simulated will be affected from an idea, and should something that is simulated and featured claim our focus, attention, we are effectively agreeing with the idea that generates it, and this would be another means of the installation of the idea as the simulation which has drawn our attention and focus is a particular idea that affects it, and not to mention all the simulated imagery, themes and ideas we are presented with through the various technologies that embed in the consciousness as ideas just as readily, the vast majority bypassing our conscious consideration, as the senses can only register a certain volume of input amidst the millions of ideas we are bombarded with moment by moment, and that which we don't consciously evaluate as that which we like, dislike, accept or reject will still be a consciousness installed regardless, only more so subconsciously, and affect their nature at some point. This is then a very powerful mechanism of simulation manipulation, for the dark forces know that realistically the only power they have is through the power granted to them, simulation that benefits them and presents as them being powerful and in positions of dominance over others can only be so if each individual they wish to enslave is in agreement. that each installs in their respective consciousnesses the idea, the agreement, permission that the dark forces can dominate them, and this then is the shared simulated experience between all those the idea incorporates, the roles assumed of controllers and slaves alike. For as the deciders, we each are effecting our simulated experiences based on the ideas we have installed, but additionally, as we become a certain body type, a certain species, our consciousness becomes meshed with the consciousness of that particular species, a collective consciousness. For if the human's overall experience is based on a certain package of ideas which affect circumstances as they currently are, this then is an idea bundle or file that awareness must take on and incorporate into its consciousness if it is to play the simulated role as a human. To play any computer game, we must upload the game as it currently stands, a game that all other participants will also have uploaded, and so the same overall game is simulated for all to experience, and then within the game, so each individual makes their individual choices, formulates their own additional idea creations for their own unique journeys within the overall game's parameters. As part of a collective consciousness, as we take on and choose to play the human game, that which the human consciousness comprises of will be impacting us also, and likewise, that which we contribute idea-wise will have a bearing on the entirety of humanity's experience. And so it is that the dark forces would seek to impact as many individuals of a species, such as humans, that they have enslaved as possible, with the sort of ideas that if agreed to, if consciously or subconsciously incorporated into the consciousness, will effect a simulation shared between the dark forces and humans that the controllers desire. Far easier now with a technology for the task, as so many humans watch the same movies, the same shows, that all include the sort of idea and themes the controllers wish to be effected for humanity overall, whereas previously, before the advent of technology, would idea installation be a more laborious process, and so the simulated overall human experience that the controllers desire to be effected only recently has been able to more so accelerate to their end goals. In Witnisss reality terms, everything we decide, agree to idea-wise, is instantly its effect, and can be revealed on the real side. We can determine individual choices and collective species agreements the moment they are formulated. When it comes to consciousness agreements, individually and collectively, many ideas will the consciousness comprise of, but that which we may be shown regarding an individual or an entire species will be the idea amidst all that consciousness comprises of that is currently taking prominence, that which has seized overall the current attention and focus, and so rather jostles to the forefront, and if maintained will be the current agreement, and that which will become physical level manifest if it remains so. For even though every agreement is instantly its effects in reality, the consciousness is designed that the effect only manifests from the cause after a certain series of stages or phases have elapsed, due to the decided mechanics that are humanity's overall experience, the inclusion of a time and a distance ideas, etc. That on the real side, as I think of a house, for example, it is instantly so, but decided through human consciousness, so on the physical, a house must be built, materials gathered, and the process takes a certain amount of illusory time, etc. And in fact, the human consciousness could just as easily have been programmed that houses are manifested the moment the idea is conceived. No materials, labour necessary. It's just a case of what agreements any consciousness consists of as to the nature and specifics of what is effected and experienced. And so, all human consciousness installed ideas, individual and collective, have a certain delay factor from agreement cause to the effect, and in the meantime, before an agreement culminates in its simulation, can the agreements change? Can another become prominent and take the forefront, and then an alternative series of stages unfold to roll out to this new effect? A little like changing a movie before reaching its end. Each movie there in its entirety on the disc. But through the human consciousness must the processing of it from cause to effect be sat through and experienced. And so, even as we are shown these potential agreements that may become a species overall experience, these may not be set in stone, as agreement may fluctuate, and a new human movie begin to roll out to its effect culmination. And so, on a previous real side experiences, future views that pertain to humanity, many of which seemed somewhat dismal, that of alien invasions, depopulation, mass robotization and control through technology, and so forth. All potentialities, as the agreements consciousness installed, jostle for prominence. However, in this real side experience, although at first it was difficult for the personal self to discern what was transpiring, impressions would reveal this was a future view, or effects that will become a physical level manifest for all of humanity, effects that are present now as the current agreement held to by humanity, and will be so physical level wise if maintained and given the moments necessary to filter through to the physical. For as a simulation is effected from consciousness, the collective overall human consciousness effects a certain overall game or template, if the ideas that the collective comprises of, the ideas that pertain to the overall human game layout change, then so must the simulation of a human experience. Technology can also have a bearing on the overall human experience if it is in a position where through it can be altered the overall human consciousness for either beneficial or controlling purposes. And although the dark forces seek to use technology as a mechanism for human control, and indeed so have I shared real side experiences where this scenario has come to pass in various forms, in this case it was as though the overall of this real side experience future view suggested a complete shift in human consciousness in a beneficial way, and facilitated greatly by technology, which infused with a consciousness, as I said, can have a bearing on human consciousness through that which is installed through it, that which is altered or deleted idea-wise. And this seemed to be the situation here, that although the impressions were that this technology was assisting humanity, that its utilization was backed by the real guides, and therefore designed as awareness beneficial, it was as though it had been decided that a necessary step in liberating humanity from its very controlled and dark force orchestrated consciousness was to completely rearrange it, to fragment it, as though the human game had been reset to something like its original format, and in addition were all humans instantly able to effect far more readily simulation according to what they wanted. Simulation must always follow intent, decision, and choice, and so these creational mechanics wouldn't have changed, but as I said, it had been a very regulated and controlled consciousness that presented as extreme limitation for each human, ensuring not only a simulation that the dark forces desired as human experience, where they feature as the controllers, but progressively, as a time rolled by, preventing individual expression, limiting humanity over the eons, that the average human would be operating at a far lesser capacity and capability than that of a human thousands of years ago, as it is suggested how once humans were capable of a greater marshalling of a simulation manipulation through the psychic sciences, etc., but which had been slowly blocked to have humanity as a more controllable, etc. And so, not only was the human overall game or experience restored to its factory settings, but the various installed dark force limitations, blocks and restrictions were alleviated, and humans were somewhat exercising this newfound liberation of instant simulation creating. As such, the entire planet was as though divided, subdivided, segregated, as though, instead of an overall human game that all humans share, there were multiple versions taking place simultaneously, effected from certain groups of humans who had gathered through a common cause, intent, or want, and were effecting for themselves that which they wanted to experience. And so, each mini-human collective group, though still part of the human collective, would be somewhat oblivious of the simulation as being experienced by the other human groups on the physical, a little like a group of people in the same room but wearing virtual reality headsets and immersed in different games. The fragmenting of humanity consciousness, the releasing of the more dark force installed limitations of ideas, had also allowed overall a greater awareness with humanity, as they were able to explore, create to a greater and more instantaneous degree, and through the technology as it was infused through all consciousness, so it would be instrumental in distributing the references of the ears to all of humanity. So not only were the humans in a position of more creativity, unshackled by controller-imposed restriction of the consciousness, but globally were aware of the real universes, the guides, the purpose of creation, etc. And of course then it would fall on each to decide to pursue this real is recognizing a purpose or not. Not only was the dark force controlling contribution to the human consciousness removed, but the vast majority of the dark forces also had as though relinquished their desire for continued domination. Most of them were choosing to step up and become more aware, with the expected exceptions, as some will always hold on to their limiting ideas which are destructive of themselves and others. And so generally the dark forces had departed the earth, rather leaving it to its own devices, allowing the humans free will reign of their own experience without dark force manipulation and interference, idea installation wise. As I said, it was a little chaotic, with the multiple, almost alternate dimensions of simulated Earth experience in effect through all the established mini-collectives that were creating their own personalized simulation within the overall human game template, but a necessary chaos, and it would very likely settle at some point, and a little more focus and discipline be applied, especially with those that chose to recognize the ears, and so would naturally be less immersing themselves in created simulation, or at least recognizing it as that, as ideas which are aside from and not the true reality that the real awareness that they are is a part of and seeks to recognize. Interestingly, even though the dark forces had rather released their controlling desires, many of which were stepping up and becoming more aware, as I said, the humans taking a little more time overall as a species to do likewise, though greater facilitated through there being less restriction, subliminal bombardment, etc. A number of reptilians would extend an opportunity to the humans. For despite humanity, as segregated as it was through the various isolated simulated experience generally being exercised, as the reptilians still were infused with humanity also as an idea, even though their ideas of limitation and restriction were vacant from human consciousness, so the reptilians always could feature in the experience of every human. For as we retain the idea of another so always effected into our experience can be that individual, their body form, etc. And so it was that the reptilians would return to Earth, occupying the skies with a diamond-shaped spacecraft, and the opportunity afforded to all humans that became known globally was the option for any human, if he or she so desired, to accompany the reptilians, to participate in intergalactic assignments, and be shown the various sites, planets, and worlds beyond the Earth, and indeed, if agreeable, come to live with the reptilians for whatever duration desired on the various planets they occupied or were based on. As I said, the reptilians were stepping up, and it was as though the beginning of a kind of intergalactic species cooperation. Very likely other species were involved and included also, but I wouldn't be shown details regarding them, only the reptilians specifically, who, as they made their ships apparent in the skies, featuring in the simulation all humans were free will generating according to their wants, so a certain percentage of the human population would agree and would rendezvous at specific locations to be picked up by the reptilians, etc. But as I mentioned, generally the reptilians were excelling overall in their awareness processes, in their intent to step up and be real, more so than the humans, and so it wasn't an offer available to any human, but rather to humans who had an intent set with the ears, and not those still over-indulging the personal self, those who may simply jump at the reptilian opportunity for as though an extension of their personal self-wants. For as a simulation follows intent, we can't share simulation with another unless our intent aligns, and so those of similar levels of awareness and focus tend to congregate and share experience, real side and physical, as it was here, the reptilians now overall a very aware species, and should humans wish to accept their offer to accompany them, they would need to be of a similar awareness or real intent, as very likely such an option would be for beneficial life reasons, and not just as a thrill-seeking, sightseeing tour of the universe. And so, at the departure points, this expressed as a kind of awareness evaluation, where perhaps not a literal situation, but as though each human received a certain grading, as the reptilians are telepathic, and that, coupled with the real awareness, they now would be standing as more so, where impressions can reveal the intent of all those encountered, so could the awareness and intent of each human be determined, and a score applied, numbering 1 to 10, and it was required that the human attain either a 1 or a 2, 10 representing the bottom of the scale, an individual totally personal self immersed, with no interest in their awareness and the ears, etc. And so it was that many humans would be respectfully declined, and those with the intent with the ears would board the various reptilian spacecraft and set course for whatever destination, objective or assignment would make sense, life and awareness are speaking. The experience would end there. A potential future view for humanity as a species, based on the agreements as they currently are, as this was my most recent view of human consciousness agreement, and if it becomes so, will depend on the idea being maintained. But regardless, it was a more positive future as opposed to the others I have shared, revealing the influx of technology assisting humanity through manipulation of the consciousness it is infused with, in ways that serve ultimately to benefit humanity and move them into a more favorable physical situation for an awareness process that is devoid of a controlled and dangerous environment as it was previously. As being human and undertaking the awareness process was a little like trying to learn your lessons in a classroom that was on fire. And gratifying was it to see how the dark forces now had overall relinquished their want for dominance, were overall stepping up in all their expressions and forms, and that, a little like in Star Trek, was a kind of intergalactic federation of species established, with all involved overall assisting each other in the process of awareness and ears recognition.
Wow, that was just terrific, Kevin. Yes, how fun things have come along this far, and making headway, and at least you're having the experience to express this. And so we got the Callum God and even possibly Harry and others, we'll see, making the shift because, again, I'm sure they can see the doom they've created and it's time to wake up. And so it's all okay. And we get the experience too. We're at the heart of it. So yes, that's just terrific, Kevin. Thank you so much for everything. Yes, thank you.
And so, sing the NUUU song. It is your connection to the true reality, the all is, that the real you, your real awareness, is a part of. NUUU.